Good morning. All rested up after the ball game last night? Wasn't it fun? Everybody played well. It was good fun. Lovely to work in a bipartisan, bicameral way with our friends in the press. Congratulations to sportsmanship. Yesterday, we appointed conferees to go on the veterans' bills, the various veterans' bills, the Senate bill and the two House bills, Chairman Jeff Miller's bills. As we go to conference, it would probably have been cleaner if we could have just taken up the Senate bill, sent it to the president, and gone down that path. The conference does afford us the opportunity, though, to make clear, as we would on the debate in any event, that while we need some emergency assistance for health care for our veterans, access to health care, we have to be very careful when we go down this path that it is not one that leads to outsourcing on the long term of health care for our veterans, or even more ominously to privatization. Those are concerns that the veteran service organizations have repeatedly over time expressed to us. By and large, the complaint about the Veterans Administration is not about the health care. It's about the access to it and the quantity of access, the number of people who have access. That's a very big problem. So temporarily, we should be able to meet some of the needs, but not all, because many of the diagnoses that are battle-related need to be treated where that expertise is, and that's in the Veterans Administration's health, the health care that they administer. You have a cold, you have an appendectomy, perhaps a federally qualified health center can meet your needs. But we have to be careful about some diagnoses that many physicians primary care physicians would not be able to make, that relate to battle-related. We were told that in some of our meetings with the vets, they've told us that there's some afflictions, for lack of a better word, that spring from the Vietnam War, that you really have to have a trained eye to see symptoms that have occurred many years later and require periodic treatment that would only be available in that very specialized way in a veterans facility. Sunday marks the 70th anniversary of President Roosevelt signing the GI Bill. We have lots of 70th anniversaries. As I mentioned to you last week, I had just come back from the 70th anniversary of D-Day, the invasion of Normandy. We were at Omaha Beach. We heard the president speak so beautifully. It was just wonderful. But I think the president and others will agree, including the president of France, who spoke on a number of occasions there, that the most thrilling part of it was to hear the voices of our veterans 70 years later, with all the spirit that they told us about of the day, the days, because it actually took a while, but also what they are trying to do to help veterans to this day. We should be very proud. As they say, on the battlefield, we leave no soldier behind, and when they come home, we leave no veteran behind. So we have to do this right and recognize what we are doing is temporary for some certain, and I'm all for that, and as I've said to you before, under certain circumstances and temporarily, to transition us, federally qualified health centers may be able to meet the needs of some of our veterans for some of their maladies, but not all. It's important to note, as we talk about veterans, and then we also talk about unemployment insurance not extending the benefits, we're over 3 million people who have been cut off from benefits. This is since December 31st. It's now 3 million people. Hundreds of thousands of those people are veterans and or their caregivers. It has a remarkable impact on their families. I've heard their stories personally when I honored Secretary Joel here for her care and concern for our caregivers. And their stories, some of the stories that they told me were about how they were the primary caregiver to their veteran family member, and how now they have lost their benefits. It's just astounding that in our country we would not honor the commitment that we have, that when people lose their jobs through no fault of their own, including a downturn in the economy, that we would not be there for with unemployment insurance. And by the way, it's a job creator. The money is spent immediately, it injects demand into the economy, and it creates jobs. We should be extending unemployment insurance benefits. We should be raising the minimum wage. We should be building the infrastructure of America. We should be taking up a highway bill that enables us to do just that. But instead, we're doing our usual nothing. Some have complained that the elections are taking in the middle of the day. Here, we usually have pre-elections in the morning. Doesn't matter, morning or afternoon. We're not doing that much anyway. But others find it an opportunity cost of time, that we could be doing so many other things, including passing an comprehensive immigration reform bill. That is, the clock is running out on that. Next week will be the one-year anniversary of the Senate passing a bipartisan bill. I would hope that our Republican leadership will give us an opportunity to vote on some legislation that will take us forward. But again, there isn't that much time. I don't think we have 30 legislative days left from now until October. This next week, I also think we should be taking up the Voting Rights Act. It's now been months since the court made its ill-founded decision, but nonetheless, we have an opportunity. We have a bipartisan bill. The sponsorship is very balanced, Democrats and Republicans in support of it, and we can't get a day on the floor to take up the Voting Rights Act. Quite ironic, if that's the word, that this week, Tuesday, we will be observing in the rotunda of the Capitol, a great fanfare, the 50-year anniversary of the passage of the Civil Rights Bill. Don't you think an appropriate observance of that outstanding legislation which transformed America, that what appropriate observance would be to pass the Voting Rights Act? Yesterday, as you know, we had a meeting with the President. The House and Senate leadership, bipartisan leadership, met with the President on the subject of our national security, including Iraq. 3 points that I think come out of that are that it's clear that the government of Iraq has to work for a political solution, including discussions with all, not ignoring any sectarian differences within their country. 2, I believe, and I said this to the President and the group, that the President does not need any additional congressional authority to act upon measures to protect our national security. I didn't want that to be misinterpreted, any support for boots on the ground, however. And third, on that subject, the President said his lawyers are looking at the authorities and the rest. It was my hope that they would conclude that no congressional action was necessary. So they need a political solution. I don't think the President needs any further congressional authority for the conversation we were having. We'll see what his lawyers say and what he tells us. And then third, no boots on the ground. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So on that last point on congressional authorization, last year the President said that he would come to Congress to seek authorization for strikes in Syria, and it became quickly evident that there wasn't the congressional support for that. Is there a sense here in Congress among the leadership that if the President were to come to Congress to seek support for strikes in Iraq, that he wouldn't get it?
Well, let me just, you remind me of a point that I didn't make, thank you. The President did say, while his lawyers were looking at what their view of any need for further congressional authorization were, he said that he would hope that whatever actions our country took would have strong congressional support. And that was part of the consultation that we had yesterday, and I believe will continue pretty much every step of the way. I'll be interested to see what the President has to say today after meeting with his national security team in the Situation Room this morning, and then was it 12 o'clock or 12:30? No. So I was among those who had thought that he had the authority to do more as far as Syria was concerned. There's some disagreement there. It's a little bit of a different situation. However, I still think we could have done more in Syria. But with this, the president is consulting with Congress, hoping to build support. I don't know that any of the leaders there, I didn't hear any of them demanding congressional action. That was certainly not the case.
Your colleague Barbara Lee, she said that she's going to offer some amendments that would try to block this. Do you hear that message from your caucus, or where do you think that they're at?
To block what?
To block actions, airstrikes, anything in Iraq?
Well, I don't know if the amendment, I salute her action in bringing it to the floor. I don't know if it will win or if it will prevail. It will become the law of the land, but it's certainly a worthy discussion. Yeah, okay. Yes, sir.
Can I ask you, you were going to have a new leadership team opposite you by close of business today, and I'm wondering, you've been in closed-door meetings with Mr. McCarthy, the apparent front runner, as well as some of the other people in there. Is there going to be any difference working with Kevin McCarthy as majority leader versus Eric Cantor as majority leader, and what do you expect to see from him if he wins?
I don't know that I've been in a closed-door meeting with any of them. As a matter of fact, I've been closed-doors with the speaker and the leader, Mr. Cantor, maybe one every now and then with Mr. McCarthy, but I certainly know him as a Californian. I wish him well. If it turns out as it appears to, I congratulated him last night, and he said, "Not so soon, not so soon," at the ball game, and he at the softball game, and he. I don't know who will be the next person down, but hopefully it'll be people that we can all work together, because that's what the American people expect and deserve of us here. So I'll look forward to working with whomever they choose to be their leaders. I don't have an assessment of, if you're saying closed-door meetings, I don't have an assessment of some of the other people because I just haven't been. I know, I respect them and the rest. But you give me an opportunity to say something that I probably should have said last week when you asked me if there not one shred of whatever sympathy for Mr. Cantor. Was that your question?
No, it was Jeff Saliner's question. Jeff Saliner.
Okay. I was thinking about it on Sunday when I was praying for the Republicans in church, as I do at least every Sunday. I pray for the Democrats and the Republicans, for our country. And when I was thinking, I thought that was kind of not complete in terms of my answer, because I have said over and over again, maybe you've heard me, that the biggest privilege that any of us has is to represent our district. What other honors our colleagues bestow on us, that's wonderful. If you're the whip or you're the leader or the Speaker of the House, that's a wonderful honor. But there's almost, it's a funny thing, but the biggest honor of all is that your constituents have one person to choose to speak for them in the Congress of the United States. It's such an honor. And every day that you step on that floor, you are representing this nearly 800,000 people by their choice. That doesn't mean they all voted for you, or even that they all voted. But nonetheless, you're the one. There are 435 here. There's only one in your district. So if I had any sympathy for what happened last week, it wasn't so much about toppling a leader falling. It was really more about how sad it must be to lose in your own district. So for that, I have sympathy for Mr. Cantor, because that's hard. The power comes and goes here, but the connection that you have to your district is such a deeply rooted thing, and more than a thing, such a deeply rooted strength to you that I feel sad for him in that regard. Yeah, yes.
President will announce he's going to send up to 100 special forces to Iraq. What is your reaction to that?
You know what? You don't expect me to react to. There are sources. When the president makes his statement today, as usual, I'll have a statement about it.
Are you comfortable, though, with that number, or just troops on the ground in that respect?
Let me just say, generally speaking, and I'll be interested to hear what the president has to say, I think that you have to be careful sending special forces, because it's a number that has a tendency to grow. And so I'd like to see the context, purpose, timeline, and all the rest for anything like that. But I do, in any situation under any president, I would say let's proceed cautiously in that regard without thinking that 100 is 100. Yes, sir.
In yesterday's meeting, since you guys, the Big Four, were all down there with the president, were there other topics discussed? I mean, some short-term
Yeah.
policy things like highway trust fund or terror risk or exit?
Well, the White House has put out their readout of the meeting, and it focused largely on Iraq. But as you probably know, going in, the White House said it was about national security, including Iraq. And so the president did give us a briefing of his view on Ukraine, and also as a follow-up of his trip to Europe and the meetings that he had when he was there previous to D-Day and then leading up to D-Day, and his interactions with foreign leaders and the rest. I'm sure if you ask the White House, they might tell you more about that. But that is another subject that we did talk about the Ukraine and what the possibilities are working with our allies to, again, resolve conflict in a peaceful way. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Are you at all concerned that with a push from the right in these Republican leadership elections, it may be hard to get certain fiscal bills accomplished this year, like the Highway Trust Fund or Exim Bank or TRIA?
Well, all three of those are urgently needed for the economy of our country. They've really not been particularly partisan in the past. Certainly, infrastructure and highway had always been one of the least partisan areas of legislative success in the Congress. The TRIA is urgent. It's really urgent. Terrorism Risk Insurance Act. It's about terrorism risk. And we passed this before, with heightened interest in it, of course, following 9/11. But now it's time for reauthorization. And for some reason, the chairman of the Financial Services Committee has very much opposed to the proposal that has support, public-private support, as the way to go forward. The main difference is that we have a $100 million backstop. After $100 billion, then we come in. He wants to make it $500 million. Well, that's huge. And what the consequence of that is, it's very hard for anyone who wants to build a building, a hotel, whatever, to get credit, because the exposure is so great. And what's hard for us, especially if it's a hotel, is they can go some other place. The hospitality industry is booming all over the world. They don't have to fight for something in the U.S. if the exposure is so great that they can't get credit and therefore can't build. So this is something that has no partisan. One of the first piece of legislation that I dealt with when I was whip was became whip 01, so I became whip in 02, 12 years ago, was terrorism risk insurance. We worked with the public, private, all the elements of this, and what the private sector was proposing was very reasonable. And we worked to get that done, but it took a very long time because there was opposition on the other side. We were in the minority at the time. 500,000 is a total, not a non-starter, it's a total deterrent. So I would hope that in the leadership, other minds would prevail, and that their friends in the financial community, this is financial services, this is development, this is construction, it's so much in terms of jobs in our country, that the other minds would prevail, and they would support the up until now, bipartisan nature of the proposal that is there. Exim Bank, another big job creator for us, brings money into the Treasury in 5 years, like over $1.5 billion into the Treasury. It's about how we support exports for our country. Other countries do it to a fairly well, and our Republican colleagues call it corporate welfare. Well, it's about small business, medium-sized business, and big business. Yes, Boeing does benefit from it, but that's important to us, and there are lots of subcontractors involved. So this may be more of an answer than you were expecting, but the Ex-Im Bank, again, shouldn't be a partisan issue, and if they want to talk about corporate welfare, we got plenty other of their friends that we could be talking about rather than the Ex-Im Bank, which is a job creator, deficit reducer, and absolutely essential in the world competition as we engage in global trade. Highway, I think we talked about that a little bit. You know that. Yes, sir.
So with our options as limited as they are in Iraq, with what you know, do you think the United States can do effective counterterrorism in Iraq today, and is it advisable that we try to cooperate with Iran to do so?
First question, we must do effective counterterrorism because the ISIS or L, whatever you want to call them, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, for one title, it really is a counterterrorism challenge for a terrorism challenge for us, and we have to do what is necessary. That's different from being engaged in a sectarian war in Iraq. You know, what is in our national interest in terms of counterterrorism. I'm not one who's interested in working with Iran on this. I mean, I think you have to be open to where you can get support for things, but I don't have a confidence level that right now we're trying to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon that can't happen. It's a funny thing. Funny is not the word. Funny in terms of peculiar, odd, strange thing that here we are talking about cooperating with Iran in terms of Iraq, possibly cooperating. I'm not advocating it. When for so many years it was the Iran-Iraq War, they were a check on each other. On the basis of false information, willfully presented to the American people, we go into Iraq, free Iran to be Iran, no more border problems with Iraq, acting in a way to support terrorists in Syria, you know, a problem all over, including our own development of a weapon of mass destruction, and they're free and clear because we took out the main check on them, which was Iraq. So I'm not one who would be in a hurry to be having a conversation with Iran about this. I'm concerned that they think we're going to go in and then they're going to go in after us, but we're not going to go in.
On these missing IRS emails, your colleague, Chairman Becerra, expressed concern about being able to get to the bottom of this yesterday. Are you likewise concerned, and do you think in any way that 2 years of missing emails in any way lends credence to the argument some Republicans are making that some sort of shell game is going on here?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with Mr. Becerra's, with all the respect and confidence I have in him. I don't know what his statement was, so I can't say I'm comfortable with it. Usually I would be. But I will say this. What that missing emails tell me, and I understand there were 6 other sets of emails that were similarly missing. What it convinces me that is they need a new technology system at the IRS, A. B, we also have to view it in light of the fact the IRS has turned over 750,000 pages of documents, something like 67,000 emails. So it's not as if they are devoid of information. I think that the reports all show that those responsible did not know about the years of the crash of their systems until a couple of years later. So I think they need they need to upgrade their technology, get it right, so that there's no suspicion about what agenda anyone may have on that. Thank you all very much. See you next week.